What's up? Hello, everybody. Welcome to Moment of Clarity. I got a hell of a show for you tonight. Are you not entertained? Got a hell of a show. Sometimes I wish I was like, the MMA announcer or a boxing announcer or something. Let's get ready to rumble. Let's get ready to call out the sociopaths. They don't start those boxing matches like that, but they probably should. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being a member. If you are a member at patreon.com/leaguecamp, I am one of the most censored comedians in America. TV show of 8 years canceled due to U.S. sanctions. All the old episodes banned globally on YouTube, and my podcast banned from Spotify. And thanks for being here. So I got a lot of good stuff, but as the title shows, we will get into the coming global financial revolution. This will be an update, although a very in-depth update on a previous video I had about what this war in Ukraine has to do with central banking, has to do with the petrodollar. And this update comes from Ellen Brown herself. It came out like the day that my video came out, because I was referencing, if you saw my video on central banking and on the petrodollar, it was referencing several older articles from a few years ago by Ellen Brown about the role of central banking and the petrodollar in the past countries that we've invaded, destroyed, decimated, blown up. And anyway, Ellen Brown luckily came out with a new and improved article about that same topic. So we're going to get into that, but I have a lot of other things as well. And I thought I'd start off with a kind of a smaller update, which I might have mentioned the other day, but now there's some video. So as I said in the central banking, the petrodollar episode and everything, we talked about how India has said they're more naturally aligned with Russia. They're talking about, or maybe they actually have already signed a deal to do oil for rupee, a rupee ruble trade. And that's India right there. And then Pakistan, which the prime minister was Imran Khan, had also aligned fairly closely with China and Russia. And Imran Khan was voted out, a vote of no confidence. He was kicked out just the other day because he basically said they were aligned with Russia and China, which, God forbid any country, work with the enemies of the United States, because we are the global empire, and whoever you're allowed to work with, we tell you who you're allowed to work with, okay? Do you understand that? And if you don't, you find yourself on the pointy end of some missiles. So he was brought down in a vote of no confidence, and then there were, and Ben Norton and other great journalists are saying it is a U.S.-backed coup. Essentially, the United States somehow played a role in making sure that vote happened to kick him out. So this is a protest the other day in Pakistan in support of Imran Khan. And that is, as I've said before, a shit ton is an actual amount, and that is a shit ton of people. I slowed the video down. I counted each and every one, legitimate shit ton of people right there supporting Imran Khan. And again, I don't know tons about Imran Khan. I don't know that he is, the best leader to ever live. So I'm not saying that, but still, countries should have their sovereignty. They should be able to do what they want to do and have the leaders they want to have, rather than the U.S. fucking with every goddamn country. And then what do you know? It actually makes us less secure, because then we've got everybody in the world hating the United States of America. So you're not actually making the United States secure by invading and cooing and destroying other countries left and right. So that's what's going on in Pakistan right now. So the global fallout of our proxy war in Ukraine is rippling around the globe. It's not just about Ukraine, as I've said multiple times. So something else I wanted to get to before we get to Ellen Brown's article is one of the best analyses, one of the best analyses, one of the best analyses I've seen from anybody, especially somebody who has, a legit has a legitimate inside knowledge, is an article by Jacques Baud. This is getting reposted in other places, and I highly recommend the whole article. It is a long article, so I'm not going through the whole thing. Much of it, you and I, on previous videos, I've gone through. So another reason not to go through all of it, but I am going to go through some of his conclusions. But as it says here, he is a retired colonel in the Swiss intelligence service, working mainly with watches and chocolates and the such. Sorry, I had to make that joke. Retired colonel in the Swiss intelligence service, was variously a highly placed major participant in NATO training operations in Ukraine. So he was part of NATO training operations in Ukraine. Of course, you could ask the question, why does NATO have training operations in Ukraine? Maybe Ukraine isn't supposed to be part of NATO. Maybe NATO shouldn't be training Ukrainian soldiers so that, Russia doesn't feel like NATO's on their border. There could be those kind of questions going on. Over the years, he also had extensive dealings with his Russian counterparts. So this guy's former NATO, and he has an analysis that your mainstream media does not want you to hear. First of all, it digs deep into the causes of this war, how we got here, the bullshit that's been fed to us, the more detail than I've gone into, even though I've gone into extensive detail on the expansion of NATO and NATO's involvement in Ukraine. But he gets even deeper into that, and things even I didn't know. About the two Minsk agreements, which were attempts to settle the issues with the independent regions in Ukraine, and Russia had wanted the Ukrainian government to go along with those, even though Russia was not a part of those deals. They had said we should not be a part of those deals. They should be an internal Ukraine issue. And there were agreements saying these areas, the Donbass region, would be independent, and or at least have their own sovereignty. And Ukraine never abided by any of those agreements, further pushing pushing Russia towards war. But they were mainly listening to the instructions by the United States. So let me get into his conclusions of this extensive article. Oh, and I was going to post in the comments section as well, so we'll do that right now. So that's if you want to read the full article later. But he says, as an ex-intelligence professional, the first thing that strikes me is the total absence of Western intelligence services in accurately representing the situation over the past year. Yeah, that's what a lot of us have been saying, that we're being fed utter horseshit. And as my previous video detailed, they've actually admitted they're feeding you horseshit. They have a giant horseshit shovel that they're spooning to you, and they've admitted it. They've said, yeah, unlike in the past, if we say we have intelligence, it's not actually true. Anyway, he continues, in fact, it seems that without the Western world intelligence services, I said without, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense. It seems that throughout the Western world, intelligence services have been overwhelmed by the politicians. The problem is that it is the politicians who decide. The best intelligence service in the world is useless if the decision maker does not listen. This is what has happened during this crisis. Now, I don't know. I think in many ways our intelligence services kind of run our government. I mean, you'd have a tough time arguing that the CIA and our other intelligence services aren't kind of our government. It's not that they're doing great work, and it's just the politicians that are really, getting in the way of the CIA doing wonderful work. Thank you, Dan, for the donation. But while I do appreciate the super chat donations, I really appreciate if you join patreon.com/Lee Camp. The lowest level is $1.25 a week. Anyway, he continues. That said, while a few intelligence services had a very accurate and rational picture of the situation, others clearly had the same picture as that propagated by our media. The problem is that, from my experience, I have found them to be extremely bad at the analytical level. They lack the intellectual and political independence necessary to assess a situation with military quality. He's saying that even in other countries, whether it's the U.S. or others, these so-called intelligence services can't actually analyze the situation because they're not that smart and they have dumb politicians telling them what to do. Anyway, secondly, it seems that in some European countries, politicians have deliberately responded ideologically to the situation. What? That the politicians are just going by their fucking idiot ideologies, not actual reality? You don't say. That is why this crisis has been irrational from the beginning. So now that part, like I know I said this is one of the best analysis I've ever seen, and you're like, he's just saying things everyone knows, but that part was a little different than the rest. Some Western politicians obviously wanted there to be a conflict. Yes, that's what I've covered multiple times. The U.S. wanted this conflict. They set everything up for this conflict. In the United States, the attack scenarios presented by Anthony Blinken to the UN Security Council were only the product of the imagination of the Tiger team working for him. He did exactly as Donald Rumsfeld did in 2002, who bypassed the CIA and other intelligence services that were much less assertive about Iraqi chemical weapons. So that is true. I mean, the CIA is a sociopathic, disgusting, horrible entity, but they also did try and bring some reality of the WMD situation to the higher ups, to Rumsfeld, Bush, etc. And they were told, yeah, we don't care if there's no WMD. Can you just pretend there are? The dramatic developments we are witnessing today have causes that we knew about but refused to see. On the strategic level, the expansion of NATO. On the political level, the Western refusal to implement the Minsk agreements. And operationally, the continuous and repeated attacks on the civilian population of Donbass over the past years and the dramatic increase in late February 2022. Earlier in the article, he talks about how Putin's choice was basically as the Russians in Donbass were shelled more and more and killed, and they even used the term genocide, but that might be a bit extreme, but there was definitely a war against them. And as that was happening, this guy, former NATO trainer and analyst, said Putin was basically in the position of do nothing and watch NATO weapons obliterate Russian population, or do something and have all the sanctions anyway. His point is that, yes, Putin could have just gone into the Donbass region, but all the sanctions would have been the same as they ended up being anyway. In other words, we can naturally deplore and condemn the Russian attack, but we, the United States, France, and the European Union, have created the conditions for a conflict to break out. We show compassion to the Ukrainian people and the 2 million refugees. That is fine. But if we had had a modicum of compassion for the same number of refugees from the Ukrainian populations of Donbass massacred by their own government and who sought refuge in Russia for 8 years, none of this would probably have happened. Yeah, I mean, to some degree, the U.S. was going to create this bullshit, whether it was in this version or in some other version that took a few more years, but the U.S. was itching to create this great splitting of the economies, the global economies. Whether the term genocide applies is an open question. If we had insisted that Ukraine abide by the Minsk agreements, which we had negotiated and endorsed, none of this would have happened. However, neither Emmanuel Macron, nor Olaf Scholz, nor Volodymyr Zelensky have respected the commitments. In the end, the real defeat is that of those with no voice. So this is an important point, and I'll probably wrap it up on this and get to the larger segment I want to do. But with the blessing in Ukraine, with the blessing of the Western countries, those who are in favor of a negotiation, meaning sitting down to the table with Russia and ending this thing, no more civilians killed, no more bombing. Those who, and let's face it, that's how this will end, no matter what. At some point, they'll sit down and they'll settle this thing. Now, it could be after all of Ukraine has been turned into a parking lot, or it could be now. But at some point, they'll sit down and they'll work and they'll come to an agreement. And so those recommending that now in Ukraine have been eliminated. This is him saying this. This is the case of Denis Kiryev, one of the Ukrainian negotiators, assassinated on March 5th by the Ukrainian Secret Service because he was too favorable to Russia and was considered a traitor. The same fate befell Dmitry Demyanenko, former deputy head of the Ukrainian Secret Service's main directorate for Kyiv and its region, who was assassinated on March 10th because he was too favorable to an agreement with Russia. Now, you'll recall from my interview with Scott Ritter, the former UN weapons inspector. Scott Ritter said, look, Nazis may not be the largest factor in the largest group in the Ukrainian military, but they are the violent ones. And they are the ones willing to kill politicians if they go against them. So you don't have to be the largest contingent to have the most control if you're the most violent. And that's exactly what this former NATO military analyst is saying. He's saying those in the Ukrainian government or Ukrainian, connected to the Ukrainian government who are favorable to sitting down with Russia and ending this thing, several of them have been either assassinated or threatened. Let's see. Western ministers who seek to collapse the Russian economy and make the Russian people suffer or even call for the assassination of Putin show that our leaders are no better than those we hate. Sanctioning Russian athletes in the Paralympic Games or Russian artists has nothing to do with fighting Putin. What makes the conflict in Ukraine more blameworthy than our wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, or Libya? What sanctions have we adopted against those who deliberately lied to the international community in order to wage unjust, unjustified, and murderous wars? Have we adopted a single sanction against the countries, companies, or politicians who are supplying weapons to the conflict in Yemen, considered to be the worst humanitarian disaster in the world? Over 400,000 people killed in Yemen. With U.S. weapons, with U.S. technologies, and with U.S. help, 400,000 people killed in Yemen. And no sanctions from the U.S., right, against Saudi Arabia. No sanctions from the U.S. against ourselves. No sanctions by other countries against us for killing that many Yemeni people. Doesn't exist, right? It's only in Ukraine that it matters. All right, so that is an excellent article. It's a long article. I recommend you read the whole thing, but a lot of it is rehashing some of the things I've covered on here before, so I'm not going to go into those again, but definitely check it out. And it's also posted like Sheer Post. It's been posted a lot of places. Jacques Baud wrote it. All right, let's move on to a definitely related topic. So hopefully you saw my video about how this war in Ukraine is really about central banking and the petrodollar. It's much larger than that, but that's a lot of the heart of it. So Ellen Brown, who I quoted several times in that video, she put out an article about exactly that, because I was quoting older articles of her about how the U.S. will invade, collapse, coup any country that is outside our central banking tentacles and drops the petrodollar. And here is Ellen Brown digging into it. And by the way, just real quick, please join patreon.com/Lee Camp. Become a member over there. The lowest tier is $1.25 a week. And you'll get all my stuff. You'll get videos like this, because these videos, they go live, and then several of them are taken down later. Most of them are taken down later, but they exist forever on patreon.com/Lee Camp. And the other thing is, several of my platforms have been deleted. As I mentioned, I'm one of the most censored comedians in America. And one of the only ways I can keep in touch with you when these platforms get censored, when they get deleted, is if you're on my email list. So please join the free email list. Text the word redacted, REDACTED, to 33777. Get out the old phone machine and type in the things. 33777. That's if you're in the U.S. If you're outside the U.S., you can join at leecamp.com. When you go to leecamp.com, after a second, what will come up is a splash page. It's called, asking for your email address, and it'll splash all over you, all over your face. Okay, just splash you. So be ready for that. Wear a tarp of some sort, so you don't get hit by the splash page. But all right, so this is Ellen Brown over at SheerPost. She talks about how foreign critics have, for a long time, been furious that the U.S. has the global reserve currency, the petrodollar. And by doing this, the U.S., unlike many other countries, can have, modern monetary theory, can print out all the fucking money we want, and it doesn't matter. We can spend $1 trillion on our military a year. Sure, why not? Doesn't matter. Just keep printing money. We can give $4 trillion to Wall Street during the pandemic. Doesn't matter. Just keep printing the money. It's not backed by anything. Doesn't have any connections that we can't have control over. So, other countries don't love this. She says foreign governments needing dollars not only accept them in trade, but buy U.S. securities with them, effectively funding the U.S. government and its foreign wars. The U.S. dollar was adopted as now this is an important history about Bretton Woods and how it became, the petrodollar started, how it existed. I like this question. First of all, thanks for the donation, but how old should my nephew be before I introduce him to your work? It depends. Does he know the expression twat face? Has he already learned the phrase dick helmet? Because if he already knows those, then yeah, I'd say introduce him now, because he's already got he's got the things that might get in the way of him really understanding what I'm saying. He already has. So yeah, I'd say if Dick Helmet is of a regular, his common linguistics, then yeah, introduce him, show him the way. No, I have no idea. I don't. Maybe a 5-year-old would be shocked and awed. Maybe a 10-year-old wouldn't get it, but experiment. Also, it probably depends on how you've raised your kid. If you've raised a scared kid who, goes outside and sees the sun and goes running back to the shadows, then my stuff's probably not for him or her. If you've raised a kid who, is one of those who runs straight into the windowless van because the guy says there's candy, then that's a bold kid. That's a kid who's not afraid of some danger. So I'd say he's ready. Thank you, Mr. Dinosaur. Is that a dinosaur? I got Bill Hicks. I always point over the wrong fucking shoulder. Got Bill Hicks back there. All right. So let's keep going here. Here is the quick history of the petrodollar to keep it light. The U.S. dollar was adopted as the global reserve currency at the Bretton Woods Conference in 1944, when the dollar was still backed by gold. You get that? This was back when you could bring $1 to the bank and say, I want the gold that's behind this dollar. And they would say, here you go, sir. Enjoy your gold. The agreement was that gold and the dollar would be accepted interchangeably as global reserves, the dollars to be redeemable in gold. But that deal was broken after President Lyndon Johnson's guns and butter policy. Guns and butter sounds like my pickup line to most of the ladies. I don't actually get that one, but I felt it was important for you to know that. Policy exhausted the U.S. funds by funding war in Vietnam, along with his Great Society social programs at home. French President Charles de Gaulle, suspecting the U.S. was running out of money, cashed in a major portion of France's dollars for gold and threatened to cash in the rest, and other countries followed suit. Yeah, that sucks when the world is like, we don't think you really have all the gold you say you have. So, you know what? Just give us our gold and we're gonna head out. And meanwhile, the U.S. is like, no, we totally have all the gold. It's under my mom's bed and she's asleep. She's asleep. I can't get it right now. It's under the bed. She's asleep. Well, yeah. Well, yeah. Just come back in like 5 to 15 years. She'll be awake then, and we can get all the gold then. She's a long sleeper. Loves her sleep. Loves it. In 1971, President Richard Nixon ended the convertibility of the dollar to gold internationally. So he ended the gold standard, as many of you know. The value of the dollar then plummeted relative to other currencies. To prop it up, Nixon and Kissinger, Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, a man who's killed hundreds of thousands and won a Nobel Peace Prize. Nothing like him. They made a deal with Saudi Arabia and the OPEC countries. So I think she doesn't use the term. I think this is called Bretton Woods too, but could be wrong. They made a deal with Saudi Arabia and the OPEC countries that OPEC would sell oil only in dollars and that the dollars would be deposited in Wall Street and the City of London banks. In return, the U.S. would defend OPEC countries militarily. So basically, you sell your oil in dollars and then we will shoot whoever you want us to shoot. Hence Yemen right now, right? So an oil crisis triggered by a brief and they also promised the price of oil would quadruple, which it did. The deal held firm until the year 2000 when Saddam Hussein broke it by selling Iraqi oil in euros. So I covered that on the last video about this. Iraq dropped the dollar, switched to the euro for selling oil. And you saw it went well for Iraq, right? That went great for them, right? We only hung their leader by the neck until his head popped off. The Libyan president Gaddafi followed suit. Both presidents would be assassinated and their countries decimated. We should not forget that the Sudan, Libya, Egypt alliance under the combined leadership of Mubarak, Gaddafi, and Bashir had moved to establish a new gold-backed currency. It was called the African dinar. Outside of the IMF World Bank. And had this program not been undermined by the NATO-led destruction of Libya, the carving up of Sudan, and the regime change in Egypt, then the world would have seen the emergence of a major regional bloc of African states shaping their own destinies. Oh, couldn't have that. Couldn't have African countries shaping their own destinies outside of the rigged game of Anglo-American controlled finance for the first time in history. By the way, it just occurred to me I never showed you the article over at SheerPost. So if you want to read the whole thing, it's over at SheerPost now. So that kind of gets you caught up to where I brought everything in my last video. We destroy countries that drop the dollar and try and go outside of our central banking system. So here is Ellen Brown going beyond where I went in my last video, though. The first challenge by a major power to what became known as the petrodollar has come now in 2022. In the month after the Ukraine conflict began, the U.S., and this is why people are saying this is the beginning of World War III. Now, let's really hope it does not involve nuclear weapons or large scale military conflict. But World War III, even if it's all just economic, will kill hundreds of thousands minimum. Even if it's just economic, it will destroy lives and turn lives upside down. So don't just write off an economic World War III as, oh, not a big deal. It's a fucking big deal. And this is why people are saying this is starting now. In the month after the Ukraine conflict began, the U.S. and its European allies imposed heavy financial sanctions on Russia in response. I've mentioned these before. The Western measures include freezing nearly half of Russian central banks, $640 billion in reserves, expelling several of Russia's banks from the SWIFT global payment system. I mentioned that on the last video. Imposing export controls aimed at limiting Russia's access to technologies, closing down their airspace and ports for planes and ships, and personal sanctions against many Russian oligarchs. On March 23rd, Putin announced, by the way, oligarch, if you ask the American oligarchs, is only a term you can call Russian oligarchs. It doesn't apply. Honestly, if you look up oligarch in the online dictionary, it will say mostly Russia. As if rich rulers who make the decisions for a society is mostly Russia. Yeah, not the United States at all. Yeah, Bezos and Elon Musk aren't at all running things. Warren Buffett and the rest. Fucking Soros and the Koch brothers and the Rockefellers. The Rothschilds. They don't have, it's just Russia. It's just Russia that has oligarchs. Putin announced that on March 23rd, Putin announced that Russia's natural gas would be sold to unfriendly countries only in Russian rubles. So you probably heard about this. This is having a massive impact on Europe, on the EU zone, the Eurozone, and it includes the U.S., Britain, Ukraine, Switzerland, South Korea, Singapore, Norway, Canada, and Japan. Those are some of the bigger ones. Russia's economy is much smaller than the U.S. and the European Union, but Russia is a major global supplier of key commodities, including not just oil, natural gas, and grains, but timber, fertilizers, nickel, titanium, palladium. Palladium. I thought that was a stadium somewhere. Coal, nitrogen, and rare earth metals used in the production of computer chips, electronic vehicles, and airplanes. So, see, Russia has all these resources that the U.S. kind of needs and wants. And even though they're a much smaller economy, they're like, whatever it is, a 15th of our economy or something like that. They have a lot of things. There's a lot of things in there. Michael Hudson, who I quoted in the last video, he's an economist. He wrote, Russia had remained too enthralled by the free market ideology to take steps to protect its own agriculture industry. So what they're saying is that the U.S. has forced Russia's hand to actually develop a competitor to the petrodollar. And to the last video I did talked about the great splitting of the world economies. So Russia had kind of always wanted to do this, but they didn't want to withdraw themselves from much of the world's economy. And so they never have done it. And now the U.S. has kind of forced them to do it with all these sanctions. And so Michael Hudson is saying the United States provided the help that was needed, help, by imposing domestic self-reliance on Russia via sanctions. When the Baltic states lost the Russian market for cheese and other farm products, Russia quickly created its own cheese and dairy sector while becoming the world's leading grain exporter. Russia is discovering that it does not need U.S. dollars or backing for the ruble's exchange rate. Its central bank can create rubles needed to pay domestic wages. The U.S. confiscations thus may finally lead Russia to end neoliberal monetary philosophy, as Sergei Glasiev has long been advocating in favor of modern monetary theory, MMT, in which they basically print whatever the fuck they want. What foreign countries have not done for themselves, replacing IMF, World Bank, and other arms of U.S. diplomacy, American politicians are forcing them to do. So, I mean, it's kind of hilarious that the United States is putting the nail in their own coffin for the petrodollar. But there's actually a possible positive for the United States at the end of this. Of course, I'm skeptical that we'll actually do that thing. But Russia has agreed to sell oil to India in rupees. I mentioned that. Wow. Thanks for the big donation, Observatin. That's really fucking cool of you. Also, become a member at patreon.com/Lee Camp. For those just joining, I'm one of the most censored comedians in America and have had my TV show of 8 years canceled due to U.S. sanctions, all the old videos banned globally. So if you get a chance, become a member at patreon.com/Lee Camp. So besides just India, Russia is also selling oil to China in yuan and to Turkey in lira. These national currencies can then be spent on the goods and services sold by other countries. So now we're getting to a key point coming up, and this may excite some of you cryptocurrency fiends out there. Arguably, every country should be able to trade in global markets in their own sovereign currency. That is what a fiat currency is, a medium of exchange backed by the agreement of the people to accept it for the value of their goods and services, backed by the full faith and credit of a nation. But that sort of global barter system would break down, just as the local barter systems do, if one party to the trade did not want the goods or services of the other party. Well, then you're fucked, right? In that case, some intermediate reserve currency would be necessary to serve as a medium of exchange. Glasev and his counterparts are working on that. He wrote, quote, "We are currently working on a draft international agreement on the introduction of a new world settlement currency pegged to the national currencies of the participating countries and to exchange traded goods that determine real values. We won't need American and European banks. A new payment system based on modern digital technologies with a blockchain is developing in the world where banks are losing their importance." So this is a big statement for getting outside of the central banking system that has kind of ruled the world for, I don't even know, 100 years. I don't know how far you want to go back, but this could be a big step outside of it. Russia and China have both developed alternatives. And for those of you that say Bitcoin and cryptocurrency will not solve all the world's problems, I agree with you, and I will get to that in a second. Russia and China have both developed alternatives to the SWIFT messaging service. I talked about that in the last video. London-based commentator Alexander Makoris makes the interesting observation that going outside SWIFT means Western banks cannot track Russian and Chinese trades. Oh, you think they love that? Now no longer being able to track their enemies, their competitors? The Eurasian system is bound to become a serious alternative to the US dollar, as the EAEU may attract not only nations that have joined BRI, but also the leading players in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, as well as ASEAN. West Asian actors, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, will be inevitably interested. If that system succeeds, what will be the effect on the U.S. economy? Well, let me get to that in a second. Let me just pause here and talk about what they're saying in terms of going outside of the petrodollar, going more with a cryptocurrency that is linked to these nations' currencies. I think all of that is something we should support, because the central bankers ruling the world and causing war for their profit is not something we should be excited about. However, as Peter Joseph has gone in depth about, cryptocurrencies are not going to save us from destroying this planet. As long as capitalism continues, it is the economics of infinite growth on a planet with finite resources. There is no way around that. That is what capitalism is. And it puts the fucking power and the control, for the most part, in the hands of a tiny number of individuals who are sociopaths. That's the system. You can't get around it. Now, there are many of you who go, well, then that means you're just for socialism and you love China. No, it doesn't need to be binary. There are other ways humans can exist on this planet. There are many other ways, and Peter Joseph has gone into it extensively. He's done more work on this than most anybody else I've seen who makes videos, I'll say. I'm not talking about some economist in a basement at a university somewhere. But there are other ways to organize economies, to organize life, and we should fight to get outside of central banking. We should fight to end the American empire, because one nation should not control the world. One nation should not be going to war with the world. One nation should not be endlessly bombing. One nation should not be killing people with our economic wars constantly, every fucking day. Okay? How many people have to die right this minute, this fucking minute, so America can have an empire? Huh? How many children in fucking Venezuela or Iran or Syria or Libya or wherever you want to point to, all the sanctions? How many sanctions do we have around the world? Hundreds? How many babies have to die so you can go, yay, America is the best? Huh? So all of that shit needs to end. And we need to fight for the steps that will end that or slow that. However, we also need to understand the reality that this planet will collapse. The environments will collapse. We will see climate chaos ravaging everywhere. All of the animals will die. I think we need the fucking animals. And not just for cute videos either. Not just for Instagram. Not just to see a bunny rabbit make friends with a lion or whatever the fuck the latest video is. But actually so that the environment which we're a part of, we act like we're not part of it. We act like we own the thing. Oh, I ate all the things that were around. I ate all the other animals that were around here because they were yummy. Take it. All you have to do to visualize whether this system works or not is visualize it if everything were inside, one building or 1 square mile. Okay, so you put 100 people, whatever, 5 people inside 1 square mile. And they eat all the animals they can eat, and they fucking eat all the plants. They chop down all the trees they can chop down. How long would that last? Fucking week? A year if you're lucky. Unless they live sustainably. Unless they find a way so that they're not killing the carrying capacity of that 1 mile. And so you take that analysis and you wrap it around the whole planet, and that's where we're at. We have to, and we could do it now. We have the technology now. We have the ability now to figure out the carrying capacity of the earth and understand how much we could eat, how much we could kill, how much we could fucking chop down to actually survive. But we don't. Instead, we live in an economic system that is infinite growth, infinite eating, and shitting it all out on a planet with a limited number of resources. It is mathematically impossible. So yes, these cryptocurrencies that this Russian economist is talking about, that Russia and China might be creating, I'm all for them. But they're not going to fix everything. You should support them while also realizing you got to get beyond that. Anyway, so what does this mean for the U.S. economy? This is in the short term, I assume they're talking about like the next 10, 20 years. If that system succeeds, meaning the if the splitting of the world economies succeed and Russia and China create a currency, a cryptocurrency linked to national currencies that allows them to be outside of the U.S. central banking SWIFT system, if that happens, if the system succeeds, what will be the effect on the U.S. economy? Investment strategist Lynn Alden writes in a detailed analysis titled The Fraying of the U.S. Global Currency Reserve System that there will be short-term pain, but in the long run, it will benefit the U.S. economy. The subject is complicated, but the bottom line is that reserve currency dominance, like we've had, has resulted in the destruction of our manufacturing base and the buildup of a massive federal debt. Sharing the reserve currency load would have the effect that sanctions are having on the Russian economy, nurturing domestic industries as a tariff would, allowing the American manufacturing base to be rebuilt. Other commentators also say that being the sole global reserve currency is less an exorbitant privilege than an exorbitant burden. Losing that status would not end the importance of the US dollar, which is too heavily embedded in global finance to be dislodged. But it could well mean the end of the petrodollar as sole global reserve currency and the end of the devastating petroleum wars it has funded to maintain its dominance. Now, will that happen? Here's why earlier I said I was skeptical. I'm skeptical because the U.S. right now, the U.S. empire is like a cornered tiger. We're in late stage capitalism. We're in a waning empire. We're losing our global hegemony. And rather than deal with it like adults, like good people, we have sociopaths at the top running things, and they are dealing with it with guns and economic war that's killing people, and they're dealing with it with missiles and destruction and proxy wars, and they're not dealing with it well. You know, when you pull someone aside, you tell them you're breaking up with them, and there's different ways to deal with it. There's some deal with it with like a little bit of crying. Some go, okay, that sucks, and they walk away. Others key your car and shit inside your laptop, which is tough to do, but with enough time and effort, it can be done. It can be done. You just need like a funnel, and you know what? That's my life. But the point is, we're dealing with it the second way, fucking everything up and trying to destroy the world because we'd rather do that than lose global hegemony. And that kind of gets me to my point, which is that is how capitalism ends. It ends with a few sociopaths running everything and blowing everything up if they don't get their way. So that is the Ellen Brown article. I have another story, which of course links into all this, but I feel like every time I cover multiple stories, they all link in because guess what? All this shit is intersectional. It all links in. I'm going to post the Ellen Brown article here in the comment thread right now. You're welcome to read the whole thing. So, quick note before I get to the last story, please join over at patreon.com/Lee Camp if you feel like you got $1 out of this episode or are getting $1 out of this episode worth. Unfortunately, we do live in that capitalist world that I was about to say I'm maligning, but really I'm just speaking the truth about. So, people, the thing is, you could be like, well, that's, you're being harsh against something, but if it's the truth, you're telling the truth. Like if you tell someone that they're ugly, it's like you're maligning them, you're hurting their feelings, and you're saying mean things to them. But like if they have one eye over here and one eye over there, and like a tooth coming out of their cheek, it might be ugly. It might just be the truth. So that's what capitalism is. It's got one eye over here and like a fucking tongue coming out of its ear, and I'm like, capitalism doesn't look so good. And you're like, that's mean. Don't talk about it that way. Let's see. I was seeing if there's any good questions. It's all right if there's not. You don't have to ask questions. You could just throw in comments. Thank you all for commenting. By the way, commenting actually helps with the algorithms. I don't have rhythm, but I've got algorithm. Actually, I don't have that either because they totally fuck me on the algorithm. But if you leave a comment, a lot of comments going by, that helps with the algorithm. That helps YouTube show it to more people because I get fucked on all that stuff. So nowadays you get fucked on YouTube if you just use the word fucked. So shit. Fuck. Happened to me twice. God damn it. Fucking my algorithm. So, all right. Next topic is happiness. Happiness. The World Happiness Report just came out. This is done by the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, and it was covered by Common Dreams. By the way, if you want any of these articles, they're all at radindiemedia.com. You could check it every day and get all of this stuff without even hearing my voice. But I wouldn't like that. That would make me very sad and lonely. So please do keep coming back to hear me. So here's the article from Common Dreams about the World Happiness Report titled Military and Economic Power Once Again Fail to Produce Happiness. What? I don't understand. You're telling me having giant missiles and blowing the fuck out of other countries doesn't make like a guy who works in a factory happy? It doesn't. You're telling me, even though we're fighting Russia to the last Ukrainian, a guy who works at the coffee shop here on the corner, that's not making her life happy? How could that be? How could that be? That doesn't sound right to me. But yeah, it's true. So this new report, it's from the World Happiness Report 2022, and which, like I said, is the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, based on Gallup World Polls conducted from 2019 to 2021. This extensive study provides a revealing look at how roughly 150,000 respondents in 146 countries rated their own happiness. Now, I will add a little caveat to this. I don't know how, obviously that's a lot of respondents, so you got to assume that it evened out some of the variables. You know, it's not like they only talk to black people in America or something like that, but it probably does not even out all the variables. For example, maybe very rich people are not questioned as much, or perhaps much of this was done online and homeless people aren't on the internet as much. So maybe they didn't talk to homeless Americans. So there can still be plenty of variables. But anyway, I imagine it at least gives some idea. There's little doubt about which nations belong in this category. In 2020, the world's biggest, he's talking about the military powers. World's biggest military spenders were the United States, China, India, and Russia. However, let's keep in mind, the U.S. was we're 1,000 times more than the other militaries. I mean, the amount we spend on military is just fucking insane. In case you haven't heard me say it before, if you make $40,000 a year, in order to make $1 trillion, which is our military budget, if you count the black budget, you'd have to work for 25 million years. So get started. So yes, China, India, Russia, biggest militaries, but the U.S. is the biggest by far. When nations are ranked by total wealth, you get the United States, China, India, Russia. U.S. number 1, China number 2, India number 7, Russia number 13. Despite their ostensibly, and again, see, this is already a little bit manipulative. Sorry, Common Dreams, but the U.S. is so much ridiculously wealth in terms of, and again, this doesn't mean everybody in the U.S. is wealthy. It means just simple GDP, gross domestic product. The U.S. is many times what Russia is. So acting like, the U.S. is a little above India. Well, not really. It's kind of crazy, the differences. Despite their ostensibly different economic models, they all boast a hefty share of the world's billionaires. U.S. number 1, China number 2, India number 3, and Russia number 5. What has this enormous array of military and economic power produced for their citizens? Well, it turns out not a great deal of happiness. The most positive thing that can be said for it is that the United States currently ranks 16th on the happiness score. So we spend a fucking million times more than other countries on our military, on decimating other countries. And does it bring Americans happiness? Fucking no. Isn't that the point of a society? Isn't that why a society is created? When you get together and you say, hey, we're all going to be in a society. You want to do it? All right. Yeah, me too. All right. Let's hang out. That's cool. Yeah, we'll be in a society. That's what we'll do. And I don't know why we talk like this, but let's all talk like this. And then you do it. The idea, right, is to create a happy system, to help people's lives. Ostensibly, that's the fucking point. But here we are, and it's not working. And furthermore, and something else this article does not get into is that we're the responsible party for why many countries are so not happy. You know, you look at some of the least happy countries like Haiti, like certain African countries, and it's because of fucking the U.S. We're the ones who did that. Every chance they had to pull themselves up and create a better society and create maybe some forms of socialism and give the money back to the people from the oil companies and from the banks, et cetera, from the other resources that the country has. We'll take that money from those resources and we'll give it to the people rather than give it to a tiny number of oligarchs. And they start doing that. And they say, hey, maybe we'll help people out. Maybe we'll start building schools. Maybe we'll start giving people homes, things like that. Then the United States said, you know what? We're going to fucking destroy your society. We'll destroy you economically. We'll destroy you with missiles, whatever. Look at Libya. Most advanced, quote unquote, I hate these terms, but they're the accepted terms, most advanced African nation. Didn't matter. Fucking destroyed them, turned them into warring warlords and open slave markets. That's what we turned Libya into. Venezuela just created, 4 million homes? They have they're trying to create free housing for everybody. They have a free university for everybody. They have a food program for everybody, which is why we arrested a diplomat, Alex Saab, who we grabbed him off of Cape Verde, and he's in a prison in Florida right now. We arrested a Venezuelan diplomat, kidnapped a fucking Venezuelan diplomat who was trying to get the funds for their food program in Venezuela. And right now he's in prison in the United States. Google Alex Saab if you want to learn about this. But nobody knows. Mainstream media doesn't even know this shit's going on. Can't talk about it. Here are the 10 happiest countries in 2022. Finland, number 1. Finland, by the way, is like always number 1 for the last several years. So Finland's doing some shit right. Denmark, number 2. Iceland, number 3. Switzerland. Can you imagine? For fuck's sake, this is how important a good social safety net is, a good social net, social programs to, Marvin Saab might be Colombian, but he's a Venezuelan diplomat. Anyway, this is how important that having these things. Imagine if you had healthcare. Imagine, for those of you who are American, have you sat to think about this? What would it be like if you lived in a country where you never had to worry that if someone in your family got sick or ill, that they would be taken care of? If you lived in a country where you never had to worry that if you lost your job or something, you wouldn't be homeless because there's basically zero homelessness. Imagine if you lived in a country where you didn't have to worry that if you ran out of money, you couldn't get places because there's great public transportation, that your kids couldn't go to school because there's great schooling. Imagine if you lived in a country where when you had a kid, you got a guaranteed like 6 months or a year off to take care of that kid and raise that kid. Can you imagine what it'd be like? And if you look at the first, 3, 4 of the happiest countries, they're in areas that are fucking cold and dark. I know, I'm being harsh. I know, Denmark is lovely a lot of the year. I'm kidding. But still, a lot of coldness, a lot of darkness. It doesn't look like the fucking Caribbean in these places. But they're still happy because they don't have to worry that if they lose their job, their kids are going to starve tomorrow. Whereas in the U.S., people have that worry every day. Every day. Yes, that's true. Where'd it go? All right, I lost it. Okay, here we go. Yes, that's true. Most Americans do not even have a passport, so they haven't even seen these other countries. Because if you show them these other countries, Americans would be fucking pissed. Oh, man. But anyway, let's go back to the list of happiest countries. So Netherlands, number 5. Luxembourg, number 6. Luxembourg only has like 500,000 people. Sweden, number 7. Norway, number 8. Israel, number 9. And New Zealand, number 10. I can't believe Israel's on this list, but they do have healthcare. Well, not Palestinians, who they just bomb. That's their version of healthcare. Hey, we give you free universal bombing. Enjoy. Yeah, and by the way, when you look at this list and you see Israel number 9, that's not counting Palestine. That is only counting the Israelis, who are the fucking oppressors in the apartheid state. Because Palestine should be free. I know that's a shocking comment, huh? Is there anybody in the right mind who doesn't believe that anymore? I mean, can we just agree Israel has lost this propaganda war? So let's see. Any other big conclusions here? Finland ranking number 1 for happiness for the 5th year in a row, ranked number 25 in per capita income. So even though these are not the richest people in the world, they are the happiest. New Zealand ranking number 10 for happiness, ranked 31 for per capita income. Conversely, Singapore, which ranked number 3 in per capita income, ranked 27 in happiness. The point they're making here is money does not equal happiness. Military does not equal happiness. A large wealth gap, having a lot of billionaires does not equal happiness. What equals happiness is things like security, and I don't mean the ability to bomb other countries. I mean, like, you feel like if someone gets sick that they're going to be taken care of. That's happiness, right? It is community. It is taking care of the environment so everything around you is not dying. This is what equals happiness. And this is why, again, this article won't say it because they never do. A lot of this misery, a lot of this harm, a lot of this unhappiness is caused by capitalism. It's caused by the idea of profit over all else. I'm sorry to break it to folks. Sorry that's how it works. If it makes you unhappy to hear that, then you probably haven't read enough things. You probably should start reading more things. Anyway, we got to move past this. And we got to create communities of people that are thinking beyond this, which part of the reason I like hanging out with you all. It's part of the reason I enjoy doing these and I enjoy chatting with you. And I try and read as many, emails and comments as I can, because we need to have this community, a community of people who see beyond this garbage system that we have. I mean, there is no doubt. If you've read 2 books, there is no doubt that in, I don't know how many years it'll take us. Let's say 50. Let's be optimistic and say 50. Let's not be optimistic and say 150. At some point, we will look back on capitalism as a fucking cancer that was crazy. That this is if we're still around. We will look back and go, hold on. You're telling me the so-called smartest animals on the planet just destroyed their environment and just put the biggest sociopaths as the guys running the show? What? That moment will come at some point. It's just, are we going to do it now? We're going to do it fucking 300 years from now. Because it's coming. It's got to come. All right, guys, I should wrap it up. This has been a long one, but I've enjoyed it. I have a new comedy and news video. I don't have a name for those, but there's a reason I don't have a name for them yet, because they will be given a new show name, and they will be a new show starting soon. I'm making an announcement in the next few days that I will have a new show. It will not be a television show. It'll be an internet show, but I will have a new show starting hopefully in mid to later May, but I will be announcing it soon. And that is why I'm not giving my comedy videos a new name, but I have been still making them, and you can watch them at youtube.com/momentofclarity. or on Rockfin, or really patreon.com/Lee Camp. And they're, 6 to 10 minutes comedy and news videos, and you can get them all at Patreon. Some are for patrons only. Some are free for all, and you can get it patreon.com/Lee Camp. So if you feel like you got $1 out of this episode, if you're sitting there right now and you're like, I got as much out of this episode as I get from buying a coffee at the fucking store. If you think that right now, then go to Patreon, become a member. If you can only afford the lowest tier, that would be that's totally awesome. $1.25 a week. So way less than you'd spend on a coffee, assuming you get more than one a week. And yes, I hate, here I am trashing capitalism, and I have to say, go become a member. I fucking have to live in this shitstorm too, and it sucks. And my videos get deleted for it, and all my stuff's gotten banned on YouTube for it. But I'm still trying to make this show work. And thanks to all you guys, I'm hoping it will happen. And I'll have an announcement soon. But patreon.com/Lee Camp. And to join my free email list, text the word redacted to 33777. All right. Keep fighting.